Welcome back to the big picture. My guest is Dr. Todd Shatkin, and we're talking about what else? The virus and how people are coping and what Dr. Shatkin is doing to help Western New York. You have decided to start testing for the virus. First of all, what made you decide to do that?
Well, Phil, first of all, thank you for having me on the show here, and it's always a pleasure to be associated with WBBZ-TV. To answer your question, as a health professional and anybody following the news knows that there's a tremendous need for coronavirus testing. And if you look at some of the countries around the world, for example, Iceland did a massive number of testing of their population, and they found that as many as 25% of the people that were infected with the disease showed no symptoms whatsoever. So they're basically carrying the infection. And I think people have a right to know if they are carrying this infection or if they're having any symptoms or whatnot to see whether they have the virus. There just isn't enough testing to go around the whole country. And my brother and I put a protocol together, and I worked on this with the Erie County Health Department's advice. I've been in touch with Gail Burstein, who's been very helpful in giving me advice on how to go about doing this. And we're going to do a drive up and drive through testing program here at the Aesthetic Associates Center on the weekends, on Saturdays and Sundays, so people can come by, get their swab done, and then they can go on and continue on their day without having to get out of the car or anything like that.
Was it difficult to get this process approved and going and organized?
Well, there's no such thing as really approval, but what we did, it was a project to get it to this point. I started working on this about a month ago, and I was hoping to start doing the testing about 2 weeks ago. We had a couple little setbacks. Part of the problem is there are not enough supplies to go around. You can't even get these specialized swabs to do the nasal swabs. They're almost impossible to get. So I found a supplier for that. Then you have to have the specific liquid that these swabs have to be placed in to get to a laboratory to process them, and that's on short supply. So the whole world is trying to get these products. I spent a lot of time and effort, about $20,000 of cash and my own money to put all this together. So it's been a project,
So, it's a lot more complicated than people might expect. Once this starts to go and you get involved in actually doing the testing, I'm sure it'll ramp up, but at the beginning, how many tests are you going to be able to do at the start?
We're going to start this Saturday and Sunday, and we're set up we have over 1,000 tests available to do the beginning, and I think by the following weekend we'll have more. I don't know how many people will come. They have to sign up in advance. They have to call our phone number, which is 43-SMILE. They call that number, or they can, we send out an email to all of our patients where they can click on a link and follow that app and sign up online. And if they call the phone number, we can send them that link, and they can sign up online and go through the process, answer a number of questions, which are New York State Department of Health type questions that the CDC and the Department of Health is requiring to answer. If you're sick, if you're really sick, you should be going to your doctor and you should be going to the hospital. You shouldn't be coming to a drive-through if you're really sick. This is for people who are, maybe they don't feel great and they want to get tested, or maybe they feel normal and they're asymptomatic, but they want to make sure that they're safe and to be around their family and loved ones.
Well, that's what I was going to ask is who. Now, I talked to Dr. Vasquez yesterday.
And we're working very closely with him, by the way.
Raul is a great guy,
yeah, very
knowledgeable, and he kind of outlined who should be or would be eligible to do the testing.
Right.
In your case now, and you said you're going to do this on the weekends to start, Saturday and Sunday.
Yes.
Okay, so if somebody thinks that they might want to be tested, how do they know whether they're going to be qualified to test? If they're not a patient of yours, or if they are a patient of yours, how do they know whether they should try it?
Well, we've sent out an email to all of our prospective patients that come to either myself or my brother's office, and their family and loved ones are welcome to join in. And depending on the response, if we have enough space and time, we'll open this up to more people. But basically, there's a series of questions. Do you have a cough? Do you have a cold? Do you have a fever? Are you having trouble breathing? Those type of questions. And if you're really having a major problem, you really need to talk to your doctor and go to the hospital. Now, we also are opening this up to other doctors to refer patients to our program for this testing. Dr. Vasquez is one of them. Dr. Chet Fox and Dr. Vasquez work together. And anybody who's a patient of the Urban Medical Group or any of their medical groups that Dr. Vasquez runs are also eligible to come to our drive-through testing. And he's got over 250 doctors that work in his organization. So that's why I mentioned we're partnering with them as well. And okay. I'd be remiss not to mention, you asked me how I got to this point. It was not easy. Damon College was very supportive of us. They've helped us with some of the laboratory materials that we needed to get things set up. And they're very, very wonderful people to work with. Mike Brogan and his team are just fantastic. And Dietrich Funeral Home, Judd Dietrich has offered his parking lot so that we don't have a lot of traffic going through. They can pull right into the Dietrich Funeral Home parking lot and then come through our parking lot, which is attached, and go to the drive-through.
Now, as this rolls out, I'm assuming that depending on supplies and materials, you're going to be doing more, or is it?
My plan is to do it every weekend as long as I can, and we've partnered with Quest Laboratory. They're going to be supplying a lot of the supplies that we need in addition to what I've already purchased. So we anticipate having ample supplies to continue the testing each weekend as we go forward, hopefully until this whole thing is over. That's my goal, depending on the number of people that sign up for the testing.
Okay,
so you do need to have, when you fill out the app, when you fill out the online portal, you need to put your primary doctor's name and address and phone number so we can reach out to that doctor and contact them. Should you have a positive result, we want to let the doctor know so they can follow up with their primary doctor.
Okay, so somebody's sitting at home watching this now, and depending on their circumstances, say that they're not experiencing any symptoms, and as we've talked about before, this could be a stealth disease. I mean, you could have absolutely no symptoms, but still have the virus. And just assume that they have an elderly person or somebody at risk in their household. Right. And they're not sure because they're not sick, should I be tested or shouldn't I be tested? What would your advice be?
Well, I really think it's got to be the patient's decision if they want to be tested or not, but it depends on their level of anxiety and concern. Our goal is obviously to test people that are health workers or that have may have a couple symptoms and they're worried, but also those who may have been in contact with other individuals who've had the virus or have been sick. And then, of course, the next group are the patients that may just have some anxiety and want to get tested themselves because they're concerned that they may be around loved ones that are elderly or have autoimmune problems or things like that, that they just want to stay safe and secure knowing that they're free of the disease or the infection.
So will people have an appointment to be tested? They'll come at a certain time?
Yeah, so what we have is on the app, which we can get you the link to the app and you can share it. But basically, they'll go through the process of this questionnaire. They'll go through the consent form and whatnot. And then at the end, they'll pick a time slot, similar to what you would do if you were going to go to the Genius Bar at the Apple Store. There'll be a certain number of time slots on Saturday and Sunday, and they'll pick the slot that works for them, and then that's how they'll get their time. And they're hour slots, so they can come anytime between 8 and 9, 9 and 10, 10 and 11, 11 and 12, and we're going to take up to 30 cars per hour.
Okay. And when we were talking to Dr. Vasquez, we talked about two different kinds of tests. We talked about the swab,
right,
which is testing for the active virus, and we talked about a blood test that he does to see whether you have antibodies.
Right.
This is the swab test, right?
Right. Our initial plan is to do the swab testing, and we're going to do that. Our goal is to do this for a number of reasons. Number one, find out if they have the test, if they have the positive virus. At that point, if they're a current patient of ours or a patient of another doctor's, we want to follow up with them. First of all, if they're positive, they need to stay in quarantine for 2 weeks minimum, as the CDC recommends. And then after that, they'll come back for a follow-up test to see if the virus is out of their system. And at that point, we can check for antibodies to see if they have an antibody for the test for the coronavirus.
How long?
And that's a finger stick.
How long does the test take? It's just a swab, so it's pretty quick, I would assume.
Yeah.
And then how long does it take to get the results, and how do they get notified?
Right. So Quest Laboratories assured us that they'll have the results within 1 to 2 days in almost most cases. So once the results are in, the patients can log on to myquest.com and they can check it, and they'll see when they should get an email when their results are in, and then they can check it online and they'll get their results. And if it's a positive result, we will notify their family physician, and Quest will also notify the Erie County Health Department, the New York State Health Department, and whatnot, so that they're counted as part of the positive results.
So there's a lot of elements to this, Quest being one of them. How did you come to partner with Quest?
Well, honestly, at the suggestion of the Erie County Health Department. Originally, we were going to do the lab work right here, and we had everything all set up to do that, but we realized that that was not something we were able to do. There's a lot of logistics and there's a lot of regulatory control. So then the suggestion was that we partner with one of the larger commercial laboratories, and we contacted Quest and worked out things with them.
Okay.
And the nice thing about them is they have local locations, and they're going to pick all the tests up on Saturday at 4:30 and on Sunday at 4:30. So we don't have to mail anything, we don't have to ship anything. They come right here, take it out of our box, and they take it with them.
This has happened almost overnight, it seems, and things change on a day-to-day basis, almost on an hour-to-hour basis.
Yeah.
Going forward, how do you see this evolving? In your practice, I mean, you've started to do hand sanitizers and various other things.
Yeah.
How has your overall operation changed in addition to the testing?
Well, it's interesting you asked that. We actually are sending a letter today to Governor Cuomo to show him what our protocol is here at the Aesthetic Associate Center, and advising them actually to actually implement this in other surgery centers around the country, because we are an accredited ambulatory surgery center here, with my brother being a plastic surgeon, Samuel Shatkin Jr., MD, and myself as a dentist. We have quite an establishment here where we perform a lot of surgeries, as well as dental surgeries and plastic surgeries, and many of it is elective surgery. And I know Governor Cuomo is toying with the idea of reopening part of the state to allow them to do elective surgery. And I understand he's actually done so in some of the areas of the state, not so much yet in Erie County. But we came up with what we think is a very strong protocol to reopen dental offices and surgery centers around the country. And we're sending an overnight letter to Governor Cuomo today to show him the protocol that we've outlined, which essentially is, if a patient has any upcoming surgical procedure in the next 3 to 5 days, we want them to be tested on that weekend prior. And we will test them, we will get the swabs hopefully within a day or two, and then we'll know if that patient's positive or not. If that patient's positive, we're not going to do any elective procedures on them. We're going to make them quarantine for 2 weeks. If they're negative, we're going to suggest that they stay quarantined for the 3 or 4 days before their surgery, so that between the time they're tested and the time they come in, they're not exposed to anything. When they do come in for their procedure, we're going to do the antibody test also as a secondary level test before we do the work on that patient, so that we can protect both the patient, our staff, ourselves, our nurses and dental assistants around us, so that we have no worry about our own people and also any other patients that might be in the office at the same time as that particular patient. So we think this is a very strong protocol that we feel really should be implemented for dentists and surgeons and elective plastic surgeons and the like throughout the country, and certainly in New York State. So we're asking Governor Cuomo to look at our protocol and see if he thinks it's an acceptable one.
Okay, so hold that thought. We're out of time for this segment, so we'll be right back after this.